Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. We've got a full house of releases this week. So I'm hoping that you guys are all in your post-holiday blissed out state and you have plenty of time to read because we've got lots of books for you. So I'm very, very lucky to be able to talk to Susan King and Matilda Madison. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Sure.
And C.H. Admirand and Emily Murdoch both have releases this week too. They couldn't join us for the recording, so we'll catch up with them later. But I'll make sure I put the links to their books in the chat so you can catch them as well. And the first book that launched this week was C.H.'s book, which was The Duke's Man at Arms, which is book 11 in the Duke's Guard series. And the next book was Emily's book, which was Half a Chance, which is book 4. I'm sorry, I had to look it up at my notes because there are a lot of books. Book 4 in the Chances. And then the book that released after that is Hope in the Highlands, which is Matilda Madison's book. And it's book 1 in a brand new series, Seduced in Scotland. It's got the best Romancing This Joan kind of cover. Just a gorgeous throwbacky kind of cover. So
yeah, I love it. I'm sorry?
Can you tell us about that one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Hope in the Highlands follows 3 sisters, Hope, Faith, and Grace, and they are granddaughters of an earl, and they live in London on a pretty tight income with their grandmother because their parents died tragically. And on the night that one of the sisters causes a scandal, the grandmother dies, and Hope's boyfriend, or beau, drops her. All this happens in one night, and they are rescued in a way by their great aunt, their grandmother's sister, and are whisked away to Scotland to Lismore Hall. And Hope is the oldest, and she meets Graham McKinnon, who was born in Lismore, but on the day he was born, his father gambled away the castle to Hope's great aunt, who was a mistress of George IV. So for the past 30 years, Graham's been going there once a month trying to convince the old woman to sell him the castle. And she's like, no. And then finally her nieces come. She's like, I'll definitely give it to you if you marry my niece.
Oh, so we get an arranged marriage too.
Yeah, well, he's furious and says no. And she was like, oh, I thought you wanted it. And and you would do anything for it. And so he's like, well, I'm not being dictated to by an old English woman, and I'm not falling in love with an English woman. Of course they fall in love. And the sisters are meddlesome and interfering just as much as the aunt, and everybody's got a weird personality, and strange heroes fall out of the sky. And
fun.
It's an exciting series. I'm very excited about it. It's so funny because usually I love the first book the most and then the second one the second most, but it's reversed. I love the first one, I love the second one more, I love the third one.
Oh, so, great.
I'm very excited about the series.
So it sounds kind of rompy, which matches the cover, it's just that kind of
absolutely
good ride kind of thing,
Yeah, and I love the cover too. It's so it's got a retro feel to it, like a classic clinch, and yep. I'm all about it. So.
Oh, awesome. And yeah, I love it when they say they'll do anything, and then anything has conditions. It's like, no, that's not what you said. So the other 2 books are the sisters. Then?
Yes, the second book will be Finding Faith, and the third one is Grace in Glasgow, or Glasgow. I know I'm saying it wrong because I say everything wrong because I learn all of my words reading. So if there's a Scot listening, I apologize.
Well, it sounds like big fun, and I'm glad we get 3 books. I love sister books, and so because they're so there's such an intimacy with sisters, and then getting to see them all get their happily ever after is just huge fun.
I'm actually one of 5 kids, and I have 3 sisters and a brother. So.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so it makes sense to write mean sisters and happy sisters because I have so many.
Awesome. Well, the next book that released this week is Susan's book, and it's The Guardian Bride. And this is book 3 in the Highland Secret series. Can you tell us about this one?
Yes. It's also a book about one of 3 sisters. So we have a theme going here.
Yeah.
And these are, the first one was the Scottish Bride, the second, the Forest Bride, the third is the Guardian's Bride. And covers on these are spectacular. I don't know if you could put one up or not. The third one that, it completes the series that I had in mind, but there are other things I could add to it. These are 14th century Scotland, medieval Scotland. And in this one, the third sister, who's actually the oldest one, so I didn't do it chronologically, and I was never quite sure who was who in terms of age. But she's a healer. She's a trained healer.
Oh,
And
cool.
I've done other books with this before, and it's just, to me, it fascinates me. Not just medieval medicine, but the remedies, the folklore, the superstition that's wrapped in with the folklore is incredible. So the three sisters in this series are the great granddaughters of Thomas the Rhymer.
Oh,
And he gave each of them something to protect as part of his legacy. And so the first girl in Scottish Bride, has a lot of his writings. And so she's trying to put them together in a book, and she's writing out in manuscript. And King Edward keys into this, and he wants it. King Edward, at this point, if you all remember your Braveheart, King Edward is he's in the last legs of his life, basically. He's in his last year with this trilogy. And so he wants whatever the Rhymer has left this family. He figures he could use that. So he wants it. So the first one, they're after the book. The second one, there's a stone, of sort of an elf arrow that the sister has possession of. So he and his, the McBaddies want that. And then, so the third one, she's a healer. She has a healing stone. Some people may be aware of these charm stones that are used in Highland healing. So she's got a crystal that's set in silver, and it has particular powers that she's not real sure of, but she knows she's got to protect it. So
from the king, which is not a small deal.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's the part, let's see, it's 1307 at this point. Okay. So, she encounters a wounded knight. She goes now and then to a nearby monastery, and she helps out and in their infirmary. So she meets this knight who's very seriously wounded, and she's afraid he's going to die. So she uses this stone for him to bring him around. His name is Aidan Macduff, and she is Rowena. And so, he gets better. She leaves. They go separate ways. She's called in to help King Edward, who's heard word of what she's been doing. So she helps King Edward, and she goes on her merry way. And meanwhile, Aidan Macduff recovers remarkably fast, for considering the seriousness of his wounds, and he gets arrested and thrown into prison because he's working for Robert the Bruce. Okay, she gets arrested, going her merry way, for poisoning King Edward. So she gets thrown into the same place. So she meets this guy, realizes it's the same guy that she helped months ago. He's, I have to say, with this hero, and I've written a lot of books, this is one of my favorite heroes because I laughed through this whole book. This guy kept coming up with stuff. I was like, that's good. I'm leaving that in there. And he just made me laugh. And even through the edits and the revisions, and when I read the final proof, I was still laughing So I
Oh,
thought,
fantastic.
okay, it's good. And even when I was talking to my editor, and she said, I love this guy. She said, I was laughing, and somebody in her family walked through the room and said, you must really like that book. And so that was great to hear because someone else was laughing.
Yeah.
So, and I haven't really, usually these heroes are so dark and troubled and reserved, and we have to save them,
Yeah.
And this
Yeah, the
guy,
situations are dark too,
yes, and the situations are dark, and we have the same kind of setup here, but he comes at it in a different way, and it was just fun to write
It
that.
sounds like fun.
And I realized at one point that this reserve screen that they and this heart, the heart that's got a shell around it, and you've got to crack it open. He uses humor for that.
Oh, cool.
And he's aware of that.
Mhm.
He knows if he puts a smile on his face, nobody knows what he's thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Some kind of wall.
yeah, so I kind of I had a lot of fun with that. So they end up running from King Edward's guards because he takes her. He has a plan of escape already, and then this woman walks into the middle of it and kind of messes up his plans. But he realizes who she is, so he's going to drag her along with him, whether or not she likes it.
Forced proximity in a prison.
Yeah, like, do you want to get out of here or not? So what they end up doing is circling back around and deciding that they have to face Edward. He sent people to get this charm stone, this Thomas the Rhymer stone, and goes on from there. I think what I liked about this trilogy was being able to work with the historical chronologies. My background is as a historian, so I really like those points where we're meeting the actual history, and so I bring actual people in when I can. So sometimes some of these secondary and tertiary characters actually walked around. And so what I did with this book was looking at Edward's chronology, time the healer with the time that he was nearest to death, when Edward was nearest to death.
Wow.
So it all comes together, cover's beautiful, and I'm excited about it. So
there are animals on the front of these covers, aren't there? There was one with a dog and one with a...
The first one has this gorgeous wolfhound. The second one had a hawk. This one has a sword. She's holding a sword. And it was kind of funny because I didn't have a sword in the story, but I needed an object, and I didn't have an animal in this story that particularly,
Yeah, so how object though?
So I had to wrap the sword into it somehow, and I managed to do that. And the title comes from the Guardians of the Realm of Scotland, who were basically a council of regents when before Bruce was declared king, when Scotland had no king, which was the whole problem, with Edward and the Scots at that time, was Scotland did not have a king. So this hero is one of this council, so he's a guardian.
Oh, cool.
Very cool. So, there you go.
You historians who write real characters into fiction do a real service to those of us who did not pay attention in history class, because
yes, but you don't know which ones are which.
I love getting a chance to learn things, though. That makes me very happy.
Yeah.
So we had a forced proximity in prison. I wondered if you guys could talk a little bit about. Did something happen?
Oh, no. What happened?
That's it. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about your favorite ways to bring people together and pull them apart. Oh, I think Matilda lost her sound. Susan, do you have a favorite way to pull your characters apart? Do you usually have a moment, or to bring them together?
Bringing them together. I think looking back, what I often use is some kind of device where a setup where they have known each other before, because it takes so long to
Mhm.
form a real relationship that it's so useful for them to have some kind, even if they were just kids, some kind of bond earlier. Um,
Yeah, then you don't have to wait so long for them. Like there's already an implied intimacy. I love second chance romances for that reason.
Something second chance
Yeah.
romance, or just, oh, I know you when I was a kid,
Yeah.
some kind of link,
Like a
you know.
shared.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
find that so helpful that I tend to repeat it in whatever variations I can come up with, because particularly if you're writing a novella,
Mhm.
then you got to have some setup.
Yeah, because you don't have enough time for
Yeah,
them to get to
novel,
the.
you've got some time, and then if they don't know each other, then you've got to come up with something that has a degree of intensity that throws them together. So rather than pull them apart, I think sometimes you have to look for ways to keep them together.
Mhm. Putting them
So
in prison together works.
that worked. That worked.
Matilda, what about you? Do you have a favorite way to bring your characters together or pull them apart?
I'm thinking, so I was just going through like my manuscripts that I have set up for like the next year, and I was I write a couple thousand words and then I leave it for a couple months and then I was rereading the first couple of chapters of this book, and it's not even the main hero and heroine of this book, it's the next one, and the hero of the second one just told her to behave, and I was like so
That's not going
excited.
to
I
go
was like, oh
well.
my god.
That's
Like,
not going to go well.
no, well, because like her dad is very like, because she's a bit of a problem child, so he's like, just behave yourself, and this is his business partner, and he just is like, yeah, behave, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to get through the next 60,000 words so I can get to this part. But for pulling them apart, I don't know. Like I don't know. It's difficult to pull them apart because I'm always trying to get them together.
Mhm.
So it's a reverse thing. I'm constantly trying to make things easier and not realistic at all that they would find each other. But rarely do I pull them apart. If there's like third act breakups and stuff like that, there's usually something that wasn't expressed or told, particularly in A Hope in the Highlands. Hope doesn't know that her aunt is trying to essentially sell her off with this house. And
Oh,
Oh,
when she finds out, she's devastated. So, but Hope is one of my sweetheart heroines who's
yeah.
like, the world's beautiful and buck up and all that stuff. And so theirs is an easier go about, but sometimes my heroines are, and my heroes are jerks and they don't say stuff the right way. But and then people yell about it and they're like, oh, it's a miscommunication trope. I was like, yeah, have you ever been a human being on planet Earth? Because people say things all the time that they don't mean, and just to get around things. So like, yeah, it's pretty honest.
Yeah. Yeah. But that idea of Hope not knowing adds a whole layer of conflict to the thing, because then she can't trust his feelings either, because she doesn't know whether it's like whether he's for real or whether he's finally decided he wants the castle bad enough to.
Yeah, and that Graham the entire time, because the whole time she's like, I trust you. And he's like, oh my God, stop saying that because I'm not trustworthy. And it's a good inner conflict for him. And she's like, why is he so weird? But yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I love that when they're like telling you who they are. Like,
Yeah,
really, you can't count on me. I'm not reliable. I'm not, and then
right.
everyone's like, oh, he's not reliable. It's like, well, yes, he said that.
Yeah. And the sisters are very like, he's telling you who he is. And she's like,
Mhm.
you guys are crazy. but, but we've all done that. We've all been with somebody who are like, no, he's like great. And they're like,
Yeah.
no, he's not. But
Yeah. Yeah. Because seeing the best in people, I think, is like, I think that's its own special heroine or hero kind of thing. That idea that you can see somebody for not only who they are, but who they could be. And then you
yeah.
project like just a
And
whole lot of.
that heroine is particularly difficult to write for me because I'm a cynic in like the
Mm.
worst way ever about everything. So like, which is so bad because I should be like a romantic, but like, and I am, but not very. I'm too cynical to be a romantic. So it's difficult to write somebody who's very like, oh, the world's wonderful. I'm like, what? Have you opened your eyes? Like, but it's fun to write. It's fun to be in a different headspace for a little bit. So.
Susan, do you think you're a romantic?
Oh, I'm a Libra.
Oh, me too.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, what day are you?
12.
I'm the 11th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know lots of people that are born on the 11th, 12th, or the 13th, and they're all wonderful people.
Yeah, we're birthday sisters in midnight, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I am. I tend to be the optimist in my family, and we have 3 grown male sons who are like, "Oh, mom," you know. But I uphold that. Somebody has to do it. So.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids called me Hermione Granger. Because I think the world should work a certain way. I think it does. I think it's good, and I think we should follow the rules. Yeah.
Sorry, my dogs. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We love dogs, cats, and kids. Anytime anybody walks across the screen,
Sorry,
it's fine.
just let them out really quick.
So, Susan, you talked about being a historian before. Do you get drawn in by the time period or by the events, and then the characters come to you that will fit in that, or do you get the characters first and then fit them into the historical event? Or
sort of both ways. I'll have a character, and I really want to work with this whatever concept the character is bringing in, and then I'll look for the time period, because I've done everything from 11th century up to 19th century in Scotland. And so, that'll happen. But a lot of the times I'm just reading history and I'm like, oh, that is so cool. What if? So I get a lot of that what if kind of thing. And I've done, 7, 8 books now that are all set in that 14th century time period. I keep going back to that. But this year I'm going to be doing Scottish Regency, so I'm reading that stuff. And I've done those before, but I went back to medieval. I always go back to medieval. That's my happy place. But I'm going to go back to Scottish Regency, take a breather. You got to do something different. So I'm reading up on that, and I get really inspired just reading Sir Walter Scott, and that kind of thing. It's a slog, isn't it? It's like, I'm skimming Sir Walter Scott. So actually I'm going to be doing a Lion's Den.
Oh, fun.
Haven't tried one of those yet, but I like the idea, and I have an angle that I don't think anybody's done yet, so we'll try it, see what happens.
Yeah, it's a great shared world. All the authors who've written about it, and positive.
You have to kind of drag me kicking and screaming down to London in that time and place. But Catherine said, "Oh, just for a couple of chapters." I'm like, okay. Then I go back to
just long enough to set the scene. That's all you have to do. Long enough to set the scene. Matilda, you talked about having a bunch of projects lined up for next year and not being sure which one to start on. How do you get your ideas? Do you get the characters or the setting?
So I'm actually writing a Lion's Den as well, and
fun.
It's due in October. But I'm also doing the Dukes of Summer. It's the little one, so that one's due not very soon, but soon enough. And so those 2 are going to get preferential treatment because I can't be messing around with deadlines. So, but my most current issue right now is that the stories are almost identical, and I'm like reading my synopses and I'm like, this can't work. Like, I have to think of something completely different. So I'm a little stressed about that right now. That's why I've been pacing all day, because I can't figure out how to get out of my way. But the other ones that I'm writing are one, two, three. I have three other full-length historicals. Two are set in like the 1890s, so that industrial era. One set in America, but I also have a um contemporary monster romance, and I've never read a monster romance. But I was livid about something in November, and I was like, I'm just gonna write this stupid book because I'm mad and it's hilarious, and I'm just doing it to make myself laugh. So that's gonna be what I'm working on in between all of my projects this year, because there's no home for it. I have no place to put this, but
So it's an interesting digression.
it's very much like writing's always been my therapy, so this is a therapy piece that I'm working on, and it'll probably not go anywhere, but I'm very excited because it makes me laugh. So
Yeah. Well, and I don't think we talk about that part enough. I think we get so caught up in the business of writing and the idea that we're writing to a deadline, to a publication kind of thing, that I don't think we talk enough about, like, writers write. And I think most writers have books in their desk that are on their computer that are nobody else is ever going to see them. There's something about learning the art of writing and honing the craft of writing and continuing to do that you have to write, and they don't always find a home, or if they do, it's not always the home that you intended for them. I think that happens with scenes too.
because I have like a Darlings webpage that just has scenes from so many books that I can't delete because I like them too much, but they don't fit anywhere. So they're there, but very much so. Like, my writing is my therapy. I love it. It makes me happy. When I don't do it, I'm not happy. But sometimes the things I want to write doesn't fit into 18th century England and Scotland and stuff like that. So
I mean, they could have monsters.
they could. I don't know why. I was like livid in November, and I was like, that's it. And just like lost my ever loving mind. I watched this movie, Your Monster, where the monster like lived in their closet, and it's a horror. It was wonderful. And so I became obsessed, made it my personality, and decided to do like a fanfic, but then it changed. So I'm just all over the place. But
Susan, do you find I know you've been writing for just, I don't mean this just, I mean this respectfully, and you've been writing for a long time. Do you find yourself holding on to scenes or deleting scenes or writing things that don't necessarily fit in the, or are you very structured?
I always have the garbage file, or I've just taken something out and I've dumped it, but I don't want to lose it. And sometimes I'll go back. I'll think, I did something like that. What book was it? And I did something like that. If I can find it, I will rework it and use it here because it fits here. So that happens. And I tend to write out of order too. So, I'll just kind of keep going. And then as I go back I usually get to about, maybe 2/3 of the way in a book. And then I stop and I go back. And I just sweep, weed, so that when I get to the last part of the book, I've got the momentum that's kind of clean. I know what's going on because I'm easily confused. And I will forget, what I've done. And so that's where a lot of that stuff goes. It just kind of goes in the dump file. But I often go back there when I'm looking for something. Like, I know I did something. Then the hard part is finding it, but it's there.
You think it would be easy to remember what the characters were, but it's not. It's like almost as soon as they're gone from your head, they're gone from your head.
And although, I teach creative writing in private school, and what I tell my students a lot is your best computer is your brain. So put everything in your head. Don't rely on your files. Your best computer is your brain. So hopefully it's going to pop out at some point. And I'll go, oh, I know what that was. So yeah, I'm a really messy writer. So I'll get kind of 3/4 of the way through or whatever it is, and then realize that what I had envisioned as like the beginning of the book, might actually be a third of the way through, and I've filled in all this stuff up to that point, so yeah, it's kind of hard to define my process, but
I do think there's something really lovely about that idea of building momentum
Yeah.
too, because I think as writers, the pacing is so different. The pace that you write at is so different than the pace that readers
Oh my
read
God.
at. And there's something about going through the book, when you're 2/3 of the way through and then writing to the end that gives you more of that immediate.
Yeah, I find
you're
it
writing
really
the way
works
readers read.
well, at least for me, to have that book as clean as I can get it. I mean, not like, proof clean, but as clean as I can get it in terms of getting the garbage out, making sure that, everything has happened so far that I want to happen. And then I find that kind of gives me that impetus to keep going and know where I'm going then. But then I'm not wandering, anymore through the story. So that's, it helps me.
That makes perfect sense. Ladies, it was a delight talking to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. I'll make sure I put the links to your books and also to CH's book and Emily's book. And we also have an anthology coming out on Saturday. The Lords of Midwinter's Festival comes out. So I'll make sure I put the link to that too. Dragonblade anthologies are great deals because you get just tons and tons and tons of stories for 99 cents. So you want to jump on it right away. That's true of Dragonblade's releases, pre-orders and release too. So you want to grab them right away. If you don't get them right away, you can always read them Kindle Unlimited. So, ladies, thanks so much again for taking the time to talk to us. I really do.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
Thank you.